Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Jonathan, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thank you. I'm quite nervous. It's my only second interview I've ever done, so
Oh, wow. Really?
yeah. I'm a bit of a newbie to this.
Oh, well, congrats, man. It always seemed like a really fun job to me. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love films, so it's the perfect job.
yeah, me too.
Okay, so let me introduce myself. My name is Jonathan Simpson, and I'm from the online publication Frame Rated here in the UK.
Yeah.
Um, I'm joined here today with the writer and director of Emily the Criminal, John Patton Ford.
Hi.
Hello. So yeah, thank you for taking your time during the day. Thank you for taking the time during your busy schedule to start to me today. And let me kick things off by congratulating you with the release of Emily the Criminal.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate that. I appreciate that a
Uh,
lot. I'm happy to make time.
yeah. Please could you tell our readers what it's about?
Sure. The movie is about a young woman who becomes a criminal to pay off her student debt. That's what it's about in a nutshell. There's a lot more to it than that. I think it's it's really about someone discovering what they're good at and what they like to do and what they'll probably continue doing. So in a weird way, it's like a coming of age movie dressed up as a thriller.
Yeah.
Um, and it stars Aubrey Plaza.
Awesome. Since its premiere last year at Sundance, how's the response been to it? How do you feel now that your labour of love is finally out there in the world?
I mean, I feel pretty well. It's been an interesting time. I mean, we premiered at Sundance a year ago, and we were fortunate because we got pretty positive uh critical reviews at Sundance. You never know how that's going to go, you know? I mean, up to that point, I had only seen the movie like with my editor. We'd only watched it on a computer and never with a big crowd, and you have very little objectivity. You don't know what you actually have. So to have the movie play and then for all these publications to write about it in a positive way was a relief more than anything. I think that's the feeling. It's just relief that you haven't made a stink bomb, you know. Um, and then the reception throughout the rest of the year has it's been kind of fascinating, you know, to watch how it plays in certain countries and how it's received in certain places. Certain demographics receive it really positively. Other demographics receive it in like positively, but in totally different ways. Like everyone responds in different ways to the movie, and it's been kind of an education.
Yeah.
Uh, but you know, overall, it's been great, and we're incredibly fortunate to have made the thing that we did.
Look, I understand you've been asked this repeatedly, where the idea came from, but what actually influenced you to put pen to paper and write this screenplay?
Yeah, sure, man. I mean, just good old personal experience. I was in a lot of student debt. Uh, I'm not sure how the system works in the UK, but in the US, it costs a lot of money to go to college generally, and I was in a ton of debt at a pretty young age, and I felt a lot of anxiety and a lot of resentment and a lot of feelings, every feeling, and so I wanted to write something that kind of honored the desperation that young people can feel at that age. Uh, and I wanted to do it with a genre movie and not with some kind of kitchen sink drama that would feel like homework. I wanted it to feel like a ride and for it to be fun on some level, and that's how it really started, I'd say.
As your first feature length, what challenges did you face getting the film actually made?
Oh God, nothing but challenges. Nothing was ever easy. I mean, the hardest thing is like when you're a first time director, you're a first time director. That's how people label you, and that's how they talk about you. And so it just sounds an awful lot like you don't know what you're doing and you're unqualified and you're a complete gamble, which you are. So even having the script and even having little credentials under my name and even having Aubrey Plaza on board, it wasn't quite enough. We had to really, really struggle to put the money together to do it. And it took a long time. I think I got Aubrey in the summer of 2018, and we didn't close the financing until the spring of 2020. So it took us 2 years to get the money. And even then, once we got it, we had to wait for a whole year to shoot the film because of COVID. So you can imagine what it's like to, I was like working for a decade to try to get my first movie made, and I finally got the financing and everything together. And then a global pandemic hit, and it just felt an awful lot like, someone up there was like, let's make it a little harder for this guy. Um, so challenges all the way, but in a strange way, I wouldn't have it any other way. Like it all kind of worked out in a peculiar turn of events.
Yeah.
And here we are.
I mean, I'd love to pay a tribute to Aubrey Plaza, who both stars and produces the film.
Yeah.
How did you both meet, and how did the script initially fall into her hands? Was she on board straight away as soon as she read it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I wrote the script and then I gave the script to a friend of mine just for notes,
Mm.
like, hey, can you read this and tell me what you think? And my friend read it and he dug it and he was like, I think Aubrey Plaza might be into this. And he said, I know her. I've worked with her before. I have an ongoing relationship. Let me just send it to her. And he did. And Aubrey received the script from someone who she knows and who she trusts and whose taste she trusts. It wasn't just a random thing. And for that reason, she read it very, very swiftly. And then she reached out to me. That was in the summer of 2018. I remember just walking. I left my apartment and walked to a coffee shop to go meet Aubrey Plaza. It all felt very strange. And then met her there and we started talking. And I kind of knew that she was the right person immediately. And then we were just off to the races. It felt like we were just making it together. It felt very much like she wasn't just the actor, she was the producer. And this was kind of we were equally, driven.
Yeah.
And we were a team from that point on, I would say.
Did having her name attached to it help everything get moving a lot quicker?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say it moved quickly because it didn't. It took a very long time, even with her attached. But yes, her name is the one thing that made it seem real to people, that made it seem achievable. And it also gave the movie some kind of like value qualification. Like people could look at it and go, "Oh, okay, that might actually make money. That might actually be something that people watch."
Yeah.
And
I mean,
yeah.
Audrey's known for her dry and sardonic characters, and I think you got things out of her as an actor not many people have seen before. What do you think you was able to tap into in regards to a talent that many directors haven't?
Well, thanks. I'm not, I can only credit myself so much. I mean, she's really it. She took a huge risk and she tried something different and she brought things to the table that she usually doesn't. I mean, I can't totally safely take credit for like what she gave, but I can tell you that when I first met her, and then in like the first year, 2 years, we would hang out and I got to know her a little bit. I got to know her background a bit. I got to know some details about her life. And she's complicated, man. She's an interesting, complicated human being. She is radically unsafe. And I mean that in the most loving way. But like, man, you don't know where it's gonna go when you're with her. You really don't. She's just like she upends every situation and she surprises people and she's like a disruptor. And I wanted to make something that wasn't just a joke, that wasn't using her as this like sardonic flavor. I wanted to see the full spectrum and to kind of unpack a little bit, why is this person like this. And it's funny, now that we made the movie, I feel like we could have gone way further with it. Like now that I know her as well as I do, I'm like, oh man, there's so much more there that people don't even know. Dude, she's incredible. She's stupid talented.
Yeah. Back to the film. One thing I loved was that the audience experienced everything almost from her perspective, and filmmaking wise, it's mainly consists of tight compositions and close-ups. Was this intentional when you was writing the script, or was it something manifested during the production schedule?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I thought a lot about that style while writing it, and it was certainly written for a certain kind of style. I hate to put a label on it. Some people could call it verite. And I was thinking about that. But then as we got into production, like the whole thing got augmented by a handful of necessities. I mean, number one, it was COVID. It was COVID days.
Yeah,
And the minute that we would shoot a wide shot, you could just tell it was COVID. You could see people in the background wearing masks. You could everything just looked weird. And we ended up just having the camera pretty close to the characters, because if you don't, it looks weird. If you we learned that if we backed up, it looked like a movie about a sociopath not wearing a mask in public. That's what it suddenly became. Uh, so we didn't have much choice. And it kind of lent this weird anxiety to the movie that sort of worked out. But there's certainly moments where watching it, I wish we'd been able to back up and shoot wider. But uh, kind of worked out.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely adds to the atmosphere. It almost feels like it'd make a good double bill with Good Time or Uncut Gems, or do you know one of them really high intense
Yeah,
sort of
sure. Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of atmosphere, it reminded me very much of the crime thrillers of the 70s and 80s. Did any of them influence you?
Yeah, completely. I mean, those are some of my favorite movies, and also some of Aubrey's favorite movies, and also Jeff Bierman, who's the cinematographer who shot the movie. So we all talked a lot about certain references. A movie called Straight Time from 1979 with Dustin Hoffman, which was actually only in theaters for about a week and then was pulled from theaters. So it's something that's only now starting to be fully appreciated.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the big classics, the Taxi Drivers and all those things. We also talked a lot about the Dardenne brothers, who are some Belgian filmmakers who I love. Those guys were making documentaries in the 70s, and they started making narrative feature movies in the 80s and the 90s, but they never altered their style. They just kept they shot their features exactly like they shot their docs. Things like tracking behind characters on 50 millimeter lenses, all these like oddball things that they did, we definitely stole. So it was a combination of influences.
I mean, talking about that era kind of segues nicely into something that came out recently. It was revealed Paul Schrader got Emily the Criminal confused with Emily the Parrot, Emily in Paris.
Yeah, I heard about that.
I thought it was a spin-off. How was your reaction to that?
I think it's a great idea, man. I'd love to see the spinoff. Let's do it. Yeah, she goes to Paris, starts robbing people. I'm in.
It would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, I was just happy that Paul Schrader had seen the movie. That was incredible.
Yeah, it must be honoured to get him, the writer of Taxi Driver, to sort of recognise
Really
you.
honored. Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's an absolute legend, and he's written some of my favorite movies. That's not some false platitude. That's true. I think my favorite movie is probably Raging Bull, which he wrote. So
Yeah,
I'll take it, man.
yeah, yeah. Okay, I think this is my final question, unfortunately. It's a bit long-winded, so please bear with me.
Okay.
Despite the dangers and the knockbacks of the patriarchal system Emily encounters, she still has the strength and the courage to persevere and continue the hustle. In the director's notes, you said that the story was inspired by your own anxieties and fears of student debt. What would your advice be to people that are perhaps considering a career in film but feel defeated by the system?
Hmm. Well, man, it is complicated. I would say number one, if possible, don't put yourself in debt. That's my first advice. To get into filmmaking, you have to put yourself in a position. Sorry, I live in LA. There's a police car. Um, to get into filmmaking, you have to put yourself in a position where you have low overhead, where you can work kind of unpaid for a period of time. You have to be able to live cheaply, where you can put your money into making short films, or maybe just giving yourself the time to write a script or something like that. You have to you can't put yourself in a position where you have to work like full time and then you're trying to write a script at night or something. It's just not going to work out. So I would advise, don't make it even harder on yourself by putting yourself in debt. Would be my advice there. But then also, this is complicated and sounds like BS, but in a weird way, that it's like you have to work for the love of the process of working, and not for the end result that you may or may not acquire. It's a really difficult thing to accept, but like you can't work because I want to make a movie and then I'll be happy. Like that's just, you can't live like that. You have to live like, I'm just happy spending 2 hours this morning writing a script, and whether or not it ever happens is not the most relevant thing. What makes me happy is the process of working on it. That's a much better way of living your life. So that would be my biggest piece of advice. Easy for me to say. I made a movie that, but like uh, that doesn't make it any less true.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Have you got anything else lined up next?
Depends on your definition of lined up, I guess. I got stuff that I'm working on. There's a movie that I hope to make this year that's a lot bigger and more elaborate, and but would be a lot of fun. So I'm hoping that happens. And then there's a handful of other things kind of orbiting, and there's a lot going on, and I'm just trying to keep my head down and work, man.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking the time to speak to me today. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, I'm sorry that yeah, I've had to cut it short.
Oh man, no worries. This was super fun. Thank you, dude.
Yeah.